Okay. Hello Internet, Internet van Graan. Today we are reviewing The Bridge Kingdom by Danielle L. Jenkins. This story is a fantasy, but definitely heavy romance. I would put it right on the borderline between fantasy and romance. And it has some of that assassin-y plotline stuff in it. So definitely fantasy, whole new world. So it's epic fantasy to a certain extent, but there's not a whole lot of magic. It's below epic fantasy, if I can describe it like that. Then the style and pacing. Pacing is good. It does not stop, it keeps going. Something is happening the whole time to drive the tension and to keep everything together, and you're not waiting and hanging around for events to take place. It goes. Then the style. So I did not notice this upon the first read, but I love this book so much I literally immediately reread it. And then I noticed there are some pretty bad grammar errors. Not many, mind you, and I am probably a bit more nitpicky about that than most. But I expect more from an author who has published a lot, and the publishers who obviously have people behind it. It could use a bit more oversight, because I don't think grammar errors should be slipping through at all. Sugar, definitely the plot. The romance elements and the fantasy elements that work together, and the tension, and it just works really well. And there are parts of the plot that make the characters so much just better, more real, more realistic. I will get into it when I get into the characters and spoilers, but the plot really does a lot to emphasize the strength of the characters, because sometimes the plot has interesting characters going through a mundane thing, but this plot is so built around the characters that it really just accentuates everything that's great about them and kind of brushes away the flaws. Then the vinegar is one character in particular. I think she was supposed to be comic relief. She was just really damn annoying, if you ask me. And that is the grandmother. She's supposed to be that archetype of the grandmother that everybody fears because she's really feisty. And no, she was just annoying. I didn't like any of the scenes that she was in. Some of them were bearable, but mostly, no. The grandma could have stayed away. Would I recommend this book? Oh my gosh, yes. I loved it. As I said, once I read it the first time, I immediately reread. A lot of fantasy, some light sex scenes, but the romance is really well done. It's not insta-love, and the kind of strategies around dating and stuff, I love it. I feel like it's realistic, trying to analyze what somebody wants and trying to be that person, especially if you're trying to seduce somebody. It just works really well. So let me lay out the premise for you here. There is this kingdom. It's a bunch of islands connected with a magical, impossible big bridge. And it's in the middle of a sea of storms. And then all the land masses around it need to use this bridge to trade between the different land masses, because it's just impossible to traverse the seas through most of the year. So that makes the island nation of Ithaca very powerful politically and economically, but it also means they are always on the back foot. With an asset like the bridge that links two worlds and complete control over trade, they are under attack the whole time. So their whole culture is basically military and defending this bridge. They have nothing of their own to add. they are just the vessel. And that's where Aaron, our main male character, comes from. He is the king of Ithaca. The other landmass that we care about is Moradrina. That is where our female main character and our point of view comes from. That's Lara, and this place, because of a not great trade deal that they have with Ithaca, the people are suffering, and also because of Laura's father being a dictator and honestly just a really bad king. So that's the premise. I think it makes a lot of sense economically, it makes a lot of sense politically why this is important. And then the plot starts off with Laura as a political assassin going in to marry King Aaron, and then really having the intention of killing him and bringing Ithaca to its knees. So let's get into these characters. Obviously, the two most important characters are Laura and Aaron. So I'll go through Aaron first because he's the least interesting. He's stubborn, almost too perfect, too forgiving, a little bit of a softie. Compared to Laura, he's too soft on people, he's too soft emotionally, he gives people the benefit of the doubt, where as she is hard, and it shows that sometimes, especially in wartime, being soft and being compassionate can be a detriment to you. So yeah, he's very protective. He's basically perfect, but they do argue about things sometimes because of his stubbornness and his overly compassionate nature. Then Laura. This character had a real big risk of falling into strong female character trope. She has been trained from birth to be a badass bitch. Okay, she's been tortured to learn how to resist torture from Ithaca if she were to be found out to be a spy. So obviously she has that whole package. And it would have bordered into strong female character, kind of OP, kind of Mary Sue territory. But Jenkins does this genius, absolutely genius move. She gives Laura a fatal flaw, a weakness that is so prevalent and so constantly there. They sent this spy to Ithaca, an island nation, and the girl cannot swim. She was born and raised in the desert. She was trained in the desert. She has never seen this much water before in her life. And very early on, she's on the back foot already. Very early on, she falls in the water, and we experience almost drowning with her. The visceral terror, I can't explain it, but it makes her so powerful because she's not only surrounded by enemies, but the human enemy she doesn't care about. She can mess any one of them up, that's fine. But she's surrounded by water. This big mass of blue that can choke her and kill her, and she can't escape it. And she doesn't really know how boats work, and she can't swim away, so she's trapped by it. And all her strength, all her courage is emphasized by this looming danger of the dark, stormy sea that's around them, and it's genius. That this is the smartest move this author could have made, and that's why I'm saying the plot emphasizes the good aspects of the characters. She is strong and she is brave because she is facing this fear. And were there not a fear, well, she would just be a lot less impressive, wouldn't she? So then we get to the plot. It's quite basic. Princess gets trained from birth to kill and assassinate. She then gets put into a political marriage with the king. She has every intention of wooing, seducing him, and then destroying his kingdom. She does this. Throughout, she has really good ideas of getting information. She does really well. Her training comes through quite often. It's well done. The plot is well done, but it is basic and it's a bit predictable. So over time, she falls in love with Aaron. He shows her that her king is mostly to blame for Moradrina and her people's oppression. So bringing Ithaca to its knees is not going to help her people, and that's her main motive. So now she's kind of useless. But then she and Aaron fall in love, and then unfortunately we end on a bit of a cliffhanger because she has prepared some strategies for destroying Ithaca. And then when she finds out that Moradrina's suffering wasn't Ithaca's fault, she kind of tries to burn all these strategies, but one of them escapes and makes it to her father and his armies anyway. So at the end, Ithaca gets attacked, and it's an attack they cannot survive because it was planned from the inside. And Aaron chases Laura away, and then it ends on the cliffhanger of her going back and trying to help them again. So yeah, it was frustrating to end on that cliffhanger, kind of why I reread it right away. The next book in the series has not been written yet, but I really look forward to it. I think if they could grow on the same type of idea of strength being depicted by weakness, I think it could be really powerful. Of course, she is slowly learning to swim by this point, so water won't be the same influence and the same big factor in the story as it has been. But yeah, so there's an important point here that is the plot and character together. I could tell you all the nitty-gritty ways it happens, but to summarize the plot, the main character fails on accident a lot of times. There are a lot of coincidences that happen that cause a lot of problems, but every one of her successes are directly influenced by her. She never succeeds by accident, and I think this is the mantra that I would say we can learn from Bridge Kingdom. Make your main character fail by accident but succeed on purpose. We cannot call this character a Mary Sue. Everything she does, she has struggled for, she has worked for, and she has earned. Every failure is kind of just life happens sometimes, and some antagonistic forces against her, but mostly it's just I slipped in a really bad spot instead of the bad guy slipped and we accidentally won. So that was Bridge Kingdom. I wonder, it's kind of a common thing to mix romance in with other genres. Does it make that book mainly fantasy, or does it make that book mainly romance? Because this is another one of those mixes. And I know every story has a little bit of a romance side plot, but we all know the difference between a romance side plot and a romance with the mask of a fantasy or a sci-fi over it. How do we differentiate these? Okay, bye!